All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are back to one of our favorites, Nicolas Cage, and his new movie, Willy's Wonderland. Directed by Kevin Lewis, written by Parsons. It is about a drifter named the Janitor who finds himself in an abandoned kids' amusement park where all of the animatronic animals have come to life and are out to kill him, and it is a bloody, ridiculous good time. It's available now on VOD and also, I believe, playing at some drive-ins and things like that across the country. But you should check this movie out because it is very ridiculous and very fun. And it's, as we talk about in the conversation, it's one of those movies where you hear that description and the movie is exactly what you think you're going to get. So if that sounds good to you, then you should check it out. Joining me for this conversation, first time on the show, it's Darryl Edge from the Cage Rage Podcast, and I was so happy to get a Nicolas Cage aficionado joining me for this crazy, ridiculous movie. So that is coming up in a second, but as always, I'd like to remind you to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. We're, of course, on all the major podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, all of them. Whichever one you listen to podcasts on, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And if you like what we do here, you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show and have already had a few good threads going on Willy's Wonderland. So lots of Cage talk going on in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group. So, with that all said, let's go to Willy's Wonderland. All right, so joining me for what is sure to be a fun little conversation here about one of my favorite things to talk about, Nicolas Cage. We've got Darryl Edge from the Cage Rage Podcast. Darryl, how's it going?
I'm so well, thank you for having me. What a pleasure it is to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're able to join me for this one. This is a very interesting movie. We'll get into how successful it is at carrying out this idea it has run with of setting Nicolas Cage loose to tear apart a whole bunch of big stuffed animals. But we'll get into that as we get into the conversation. It is your first time on the show, so I'd like you to, let our listeners know a little bit about you and your podcast.
Sure. Well, my name's Darryl Edge, as very kindly introduced by David. I run Cage Rage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Pretty much does what it says on the tin. I've been going through the chronology of Nicolas Cage's films from the 80s up until now. Jumped at the chance to talk about Willy's Wonderland because Cage, being Cage, attacking animatronics, what's not to love about that? Because he is, in my humble opinion, the greatest actor of all time, and you can't tell me that I'm wrong. If you have any opinions on Cage, I'd love to hear them.
I love him too. I love him when he does, shall I say, good movies, and I love him when he does this insane shit too. So I'm very excited to talk about this one. I will say, obviously, you're looking forward to everything Nicolas Cage related, but was this movie specifically one that like you were like, oh yeah, this is going to be good when you first heard about it?
I mean, I will be the first to admit I'm incredibly biased when it comes to Nicolas Cage, and as far as I'm concerned, he's never made a bad film, and you can't prove otherwise. Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, I was so excited when this was announced. I've been following this. It feels like, I suppose, during lockdown as we're recording, time has no meaning anymore.
Sure.
What is minutes? What is days and weeks? But just seeing some of the production stills that come out of this, and just the idea of the film where it's Cage beating stuff up, I just kind of thought, you know what? Coming out of 2020, the year we've had, I think all of us in a way just need something mindless. We don't, as much as I would have loved to have watched this at the cinema. Not really an option here in the UK at the moment. this was just perfect. Like, sit down, forget about everything for 90 minutes. So I was very, very excited to get into this one.
Yeah, the big question for me going into this one, and I'm sure this is something that comes up a lot for you, when you get a Nicolas Cage movie where you're being promised, crazy Cage, you're being promised this is going to be Cage at his craziest, whether or not that delivers, whether or not this movie is going to hold back in any way, or if it's just going to be completely batshit. And
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. The premise of Nicolas Cage tearing apart a whole bunch of these big stuffed animatronic creatures. I want that to be crazy. I don't want that to hold back in any way. And I would say, to a degree, it is pretty damn successful in that there is a lot of crazy in this movie. And we get into spoilers on this show, so don't worry about holding anything back. First thing, and then we'll start getting into some puzzle pieces, but I just want to just touch really quickly on the idea that they made him a silent protagonist in this movie is such a kind of stroke of genius, I think, in playing with expectations of what you're going to get. I mean, he still grunts and stuff like that, but you maybe expect a little bit more out of him dialogue wise. But the fact that they don't give it to you could have backfired, and I think it becomes one of the most interesting aspects of the movie.
Oh, definitely. I mean, by the time your episode goes up, I've sort of recorded an episode over on my podcast. And looking into this, Geo Parsons, before Cage came on board, he was going to sort of self-star in his own film as the janitor, which in a lazy way, he said, well, that's why I gave myself no lines, which I think I would have done exactly the same thing if this was
Smart.
if this was my film. Very smart play. I think it works though. I've seen like a lot of takes on this. Some people have really been into it. Some people just haven't really enjoyed the silent approach that
Hmm.
his character, just known as the janitor, has taken. But I think it works. This is a film where he has one objective, and that's just to get his car fixed. We don't know anything about him before the film. We don't know anything about him after the film. We don't really know anything about him, but I think it kind of works in an almost video game create a character way where I guess you can kind of project yourself into the
Sure.
character in a certain way. And I know they'd said about they tossed back and forth some ideas of giving in some quippy one-liners, but ultimately decided that it wouldn't work. And I personally think that was for the best. I think it goes to show sort of the versatility of Cage as well. And this is me going straight into
Sure.
Cage defense mode. No one's offended him yet, but I'm like, please give him a chance.
Well, I agree though. I agree. He's a fantastic actor, and he is choosing these roles where he gets to do crazy, ridiculous, silly stuff, and so maybe that comes across to more casual movie watchers as this guy is bad because he's in these kind of bad-ish movies, which, as I know you said, they're not bad. But let's but based on these choices, though, I think it maybe gives people the wrong impression. He knows what he's doing here, and he's making choices.
Oh, absolutely. And he's never made a bad one. And I can't stress this enough to your listeners. Again, the choices for me work. And as you said, he only grunts. Everything else is physical and facial expressions. And again, for me, for the most part, it works, to still convey that story, that character through just body language alone. It's not the easiest thing to do, when you've got no dialogue at all. And I sort of, applaud it. It may seem like a safe, obvious choice when you sort of know the reasons, but it worked for me, and I'm here for it. I think now with them selling Willy's Wonderland shirts, maybe we're going to see quite a few janitors out there this Halloween. Hopefully they'll still sell them in the UK, and I can janitor up as well.
They should
Give me
sell
all
like
the
a
merch.
5-pack so you could keep replacing your shirt every time it gets dirty. That would be a nice little tie-in.
I mean, I think I was keeping like punch count and shirt count in this film, and I think it was 4 shirt changes and 8 cans of punch that he went through.
Nice.
I was watching this with my partner as well, and she said, because punch is a caffeine drink, in her own words, she said, "He must be off his tits."
Oh.
I think that might explain. I think if I was, 8 Red Balls down, there are other energy drinks available. If I was 8
Mhm.
energies down, maybe I'd start attacking animatronics as well at 4 in the morning. Who's to say?
Even if they weren't there. Yeah.
Who's to say? Who's to say? Who knows?
Oh man. Well, you know what? Let's start getting into some puzzle pieces, and usually I'll ask my guest to go first. But you touched on something that I want to kind of get out of the way here first, so I'll actually go
Yeah.
first and bring it up before getting into some actual movies as puzzle pieces, which most puzzle pieces are. I want to talk quickly about video games because I
Yes.
think that that is a huge influence on this. Maybe not specific games, although I don't know. Maybe if you have any in mind, go for it. But it's more so video game staples, tropes within games. Things like the timer on his watch that is set. It's almost like an arbitrary amount of time that he has to like complete a level, whichever room it is that he's cleaning. Such a video game thing. And then a boss fight being, fighting one of these monsters after he
Yeah.
finishes cleaning that environment, eating the food and drink to replenish himself. And then also once he starts that next level, like we were just talking about with the shirts, he switches his shirt and then it's just like starting from scratch with, not a scratch or a stain on him. There's so many little things in this that just feel like a parallel to video games. And I think that is such a fun thing as a gamer, a lifelong gamer. It definitely gives this movie a special something that kind of tips its hat to that kind of video game world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first time I watched it through, you can't not see at least some influence of video game culture in there. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
replenishing with the punches, going back to full strength. I mean, based on a lot of kills, which I think Cage kills every animatronic bar one, which most of the kills are very Mortal Kombat. He's ripping out like metal animatronic neck spines, whatever you want to call those, curb stomping gorillas into urinals,
Oh yeah.
smashing heads against walls as well. Let's see, one of the animatronics he kills 99. He uses the sword for. And I thought like when that happened, I was like, that's so video game right there.
Hell yeah.
Again, I've got to give a shout out to my partner. When she watched it, she pointed out, why didn't he keep the sword? And I was like, oh, good point. But also he just puts cans of drink in a knapsack and just beats the ever loving crap out of people. So I don't think he needed it because
Sure.
he's just this ultimate this ultimate badass with no backstory. Not that you need any for a film
That's
like
right.
this. But it kind of made me think like, oh, I wish this was a video game. In fact, it was a puzzle piece I'd sort of was on the fence about putting down
Mhm.
in the kind of aspect of video game film beating bosses to get to the big boss. And I was kind of looking at Scott Pilgrim versus the World here
Okay.
in that aspect of being. Now, obviously, Cage isn't falling in love with anyone at the end or fighting for any hearts, but
Sure.
outside of Mortal Kombat, it was one of the most obvious ones for me that had, the big video game references. We're leveling up. We're getting towards an end goal. Willy Weasel being the big bad boss at the end. Evil, Evil X number 7, number 8, dare I say?
Sure.
But just loves. It was just something. The whole film just so big, dumb, fun for me. And beating up animatronics. I don't know. That ticked a box I didn't know needed ticking in me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I like that bringing Scott Pilgrim versus the World into this as a puzzle piece. I think that that's a great one and goes neatly right along there with talking about video games because obviously both movies that are so heavily influenced by video games there.
Mhm.
So that's a great first one there to go with. I'll move on to another one. One of the first things that I thought of because of the whole premise of Nicolas Cage has come to this town. He needs his car fixed, and these people, they're not upfront with him about what's going to happen inside this Willy's Wonderland place. But basically, the idea is if he survives the night, he's going to get his car fixed. And so I thought of the 1959 classic House on Haunted Hill, which was also the basis for a lot of other things that have come since in the world of horror. But just the idea of these guests being invited into this haunted house, and if they survive the night, they win money. That's kind of the journey that Cage is on here, except for much more comedic and ridiculous and over the top. But
Yeah.
so you could almost maybe say a Scary Movie too, as a
Yeah,
puzzle piece.
definitely the influence there. I mean, this is something I think from when the film was announced, and I think it's one of the things that came across it in the fact that I think the film knows what it is. I don't think it's trying to be anything else. And sometimes I
Mhm.
look at the reviews, and then again, this is the Cage defender in me coming out. Um, some reviews, I think you look at this film, and this is quite so the epitome of the film that is what it says on the tin, does what it says on the
Sure.
tin. I don't think you're going to come out of this and have any deeper read between the line messages about family bonding or or anything like that. Maybe just drive a bit slow when you're on a highway. If
Yeah.
if you're gonna learn anything at all, but definitely there's a lot of horror influences in there, and obviously a great one you've brought up there makes me think. If I was, would I have ended up being a janitor and being on staff if I was in that situation? Probably, and I probably wouldn't be here talking to you.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have made it through the night.
Yeah, I don't think we would have. It takes somebody like Nicolas Cage to survive this, but Nicolas Cage is Nicolas Cage, so, you know.
Absolutely.
So what do you got for your next piece?
So again, sort of touching on, I think a lot of horror influences here that you can sort of pick out. So a fair few I've got noted down. I think one of the most obvious ones I picked up would actually be Child's Play, 1988. When they get into the backstory of the animatronics, one of the big, I suppose you can call them twists in this film. It's one of those films where the backstory, it's there. It doesn't really matter. The film is what it
Sure.
is.
Right.
I think it gets away with it. But this was Willy's Wonderland was cultivated by, as they describe in the film, a sicko who cultivated other sickos into an almost, I don't know, cult almost, just so they could kill families and get away with it for the longest time.
Sure.
But before the SWAT teams could get them, they performed the satanic cult ritual, transferring their souls out into the animatronics, much like the doll Charles Lee Ray in Child's Play, who would then go on to go attack sort of the teenagers, as you did in the 1980s if you were in a horror film. It's just what happened.
That's
Um,
right.
so I think a lot of influence there. I mean, maybe in some ways with the up to date one from I think 2019 as well, when it was less possession and more just evil robot. Because I suppose until you realize it's all demon souls and all of that business, you just think maybe it's robots going mad, gorillas in bathroom stalls, sirens in forest rooms crawling around, alligators in vents. So I was seeing like a lot of Child's Play in there. I think obviously Chucky now is one of the beloved horror characters of all time. Spawned so many sequels and franchises and merchandise and all of that good business. I don't know if the animatronics have quite as much personality as Chucky.
Sure.
They are,
Yeah, Chucky's one of the great characters.
they're defined enough in their own way. Sometimes it's just from the kills or the different room they happen to be in when they try to beat Nicolas Cage. I think personality-wise, we get it mostly from Tito the Turtle, who is the sombrero-wearing, very unfortunate animatronic who gets knocked down and beaten up a few times. I think he's the only other animatronic who is given a beating by someone who isn't Nicolas Cage, Liv, who is effectively this film's final girl. He
Sure.
gets an unfortunately hilarious beating with the shotgun where he's begging for mercy, going like, no more, please, like my balls, no more. Which you can't help but smile. But yeah, Child's Play for me, I think, was one of the first ones that I thought of when the film started coming together.
Yeah, great piece. And by the way, great job on the preparation there for remembering the names of any of these animatronics, because I certainly didn't write them down. But
Thank you.
So I'll go to another piece here, and this one I think just kind of rolls right along with talking about Child's Play and talking about animatronic characters. And it was definitely the very first thing I thought of when I saw the trailer for this movie, and that's the Banana Splits movie from 2019.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, now strangely, because I think I am the right age range, but I didn't remember these Hanna-Barbera characters when this movie came out. But apparently it was a major thing. And I can see the appeal of turning them into a hard R-rated, violent, gory, crazy thing. I did not like this movie very much. And I would say like the lesser moments of Willy's Wonderland remind me very much of the Banana Splits movie. It's almost like that movie features a lot of the exact same thing, just, murderous giant animatronic characters in a children's, playtime place. The difference being a Cage character. There's no like real character in the Banana Splits movie to really get behind and to root for and to be excited about him, fighting back and all that. And so that's I think where that movie kind of like lost its way. It needed some kind of, I don't want to call it a stunt casting, but it needed some kind of character that like is undeniably you're going to be with the whole time and be excited to see them kick ass, and who better than Cage for sure. But I mean, really just any kind of character that is like charismatic enough to really want to stick with and see, survive the whole insane ordeal.
Definitely. I mean, interestingly, the Banana Splits movie is one that I had noted as well, and I think, like you, I think this is one of those characters a bit before my time. I wasn't really aware of the Banana Splits, or actually the film, until doing some research for your podcast. But I think one of the interesting parallels, and again, this goes back to we were talking about video games at the top of the podcast. The biggest parallel that Willy's Wonderland had was the sort of allusions to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Sure.
And that film has been in development for, I think, a number of years now. And I think who knows what's going on with that at the moment. But I think everyone's been so eagerly awaiting that. And I think a lot of, dare I say, I think I'll use air quotes here, a YouTube fan base have maybe been looking at Willy's Wonderland as a substitute for Five Nights at Freddy's almost.
That makes sense.
But I think on the back of that, I think a lot of people have missed the Banana Splits film. Like, I didn't know it was a thing until earlier this week.
Oh, wow.
When I was sort of looking into this. So I'd checked out some clips online, some trailers. It seemed to be a lot gorier than I think I was anticipating. I did watch a clip of a man being sawn in half and all the intestines coming out. So I think a little bit gorier than what we get with Willy's Wonderland. There is some gore there. It's mostly animatronic oil, blood, if you want to,
right.
If you want to call it that. But I think that's a crossover piece that I would definitely have for mine as well in the Banana Splits movie. And I think it's so weird to take I guess that's kind of the premise of Willy's taking these beloved children's characters and just making them monstrous. It's like just taking your nostalgia and turning it against you almost.
It's deranged, but it's perfect though, because we are such a nostalgia fueled culture right now. And so it is perfect it's not really that surprising that we're getting multiple takes on the same kind of idea all at the same moment. And by the way, speaking of Five Nights at Freddy's, that definitely belongs on the list of puzzle pieces here, even though I don't really know what it is. I'm too old for that shit. I've never watched any of it. I wasn't even 100% sure if it was a video game or a TV show or what exactly it was, but I just know that kids love it and it's also very deranged. So.
I think there's been, I don't know, 5 games or so at this point. I think it is a very similar thing. You're in a amusement arcadey place and you have to watch security cameras and make sure that the animatronics aren't moving. And it's a lot of jump scares in there.
Scares the shit out of these kids, right?
So the streamers tell me. But yeah,
Well,
definitely.
that sounds fun. I guess I'm sure that movie will be a major thing when it comes out. So, what do you got for your next piece?
Um, so again, I mean, I think for me, a lot of horror illusions and the puzzle pieces for me. Um, I although I couldn't pin down one installment in particular, um, I have got Friday the 13th noted down. I think it may be part two, maybe part three. Very interchangeable when you sort of think about it, but I sort of look at that in the sense of this is a horror film, horror comedy in Willy's Wonderland that
Sure.
ticks a lot of boxes, knows to stick to a lot of tropes, and one of those tropes, of course, is the disposable teenagers.
Yes.
So we have six or so, I think, in total, with the inclusion of Liv, and with them you get all your classic horror teen stereotypes. You've got
Hmm.
sort of the nice one, the horny one, sort of the brainy one, the sort of tough one, who are all sort of systematically picked off in different ways. And I thought,
Sure.
what horror film sort of does that as well as Friday the 13th. Um, Obviously, you get the classic horror trope, the teens having sex. That means they're going to get killed. You know it, I know it. We all
They're gonna
know
get
it.
at the worst of anyone for sure.
Obviously, we get, I believe it's Kathy and Bob, who they get into the fun house, immediately wander off to the super happy fun room, which, as the film tells us, that's where all the killing happened. That's where the ritual happened. That's the one room you're not supposed to go in. And I think Kathy says, like, is it wrong that this room's making me so horny? And Bob's like, oh,
Hmm.
you're a freak. And then
Good line, by the way. You're a freak.
not your regular freak. Let's make it very clear. This is the extra
Yes.
special, behind the boxes freak special edition.
Oh yeah.
And I think that are they the I don't know if they're in a ball pit, but also like a swimming pool or something. And then obviously, as you would in a horror film, the killer is watching. Because killers have a sixth sense for fornication. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
Artie the alligator is just watching from the corner, um, just getting closer. And then they're like, I think Kathy's like, was he always in the corner? And then Bob points out, well, he is decorated on the wall around the entire building. He is everywhere. And then Artie the alligator proceeds to quickly rip them to shreds in one of the, I suppose, the gorier kills for the teens. A lot of the other ones are
Yeah.
dispatched fairly quickly, very unceremoniously. But they
Like I
get,
said, they're having sex, so that means that they've got to get it worse than anybody else. So
we don't make the rules. We are just observers in this
this is correct.
in this horror world. I found it interesting as well because the actress who plays Kathy in the film actually tweeted a massive spoiler back in November about this scene, and no one picked up on it. She'd retweeted something like, or quote tweeted, I should say. Someone had put pictures of like an amusement arcade and said, "Oh, I miss places like this." And I'm sort of paraphrasing, but she quote tweeted it in November and said, "This is giving me PTSD to the time I was killed by a demonic alligator." And no one picked up on it at all until Snoops McGee over here comes and starts giving the scoop over on the Piecing It Together podcast. So yeah, little
Amazing.
scoop for you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah. If you cast her in your movie, she's gonna give shit away, people. Let's remember that. That's great. Well, Friday the 13th, yeah, great piece. And I had considered putting it on my list for the exact same reason. It's just like it's the ultimate, unless you're gonna like go to the meta thing of like Scream or something. It's like the ultimate version of the slasher with like the stereotypical characters, teenage characters. So yeah, great piece there. I'm going to go to another horror comedy, one that I bring up way too much on this show, but it's very, very appropriate here. And that is the Evil Dead series, and especially Evil Dead's hero, Ash, played by Bruce Campbell. And the reason why I bring this up for the millionth time. Is because one of my favorite things about Ash, and the reason why he's just the best character ever, is because he simply cannot die. He can't even get hurt. And he's in this world with the Deadites and various kinds of undead monsters. And as soon as they come into contact with someone else, they just shred them apart or tear the person's head off or, whatever. They turn into a big pile of blood and goo, whatever it is. But Ash just gets kind of kicked around a little bit until Ash just destroys them, and it's like it's a weird but fun little characteristic that just makes you know that this guy is always going to win because he's just the best, and how could he not win? And they definitely are using a little bit of that with Nicolas Cage's janitor character here in Willy's Wonderland. At most he gets like a scratch on him during that first fight. Aside from that, maybe he gets kicked into a wall or something once or twice, but otherwise he just dispatches these monsters with like such ease, and they're just no match for him. And it really, I think it just adds to this heroic quality that you don't really get in a lot of horror movies. A lot of times it's just people surviving the night. It's not people actually taking it into their own hands and just, kicking ass. And that's what Cage does here, just like Ash does in those movies.
Definitely. I mean, another crossover piece that I had, more specifically, The Evil Dead 2 noted down. I think that's when the series started to really stretch into horror comedy. And I understand why you bring it up so much. Fantastic film. I'm a huge fan of The Evil Dead 2. I think, like I said, obviously with Ash Williams, very much a survivor. How, no one knows. It's just in his genes to survive. Obviously, a lot goofier and a lot more one-liners than the janitor, but they both have a way of just being able to survive relatively unscathed. I think in the janitor's case, he takes a little beating from Gus the gorilla in the bathrooms. And I don't know why that line of him like kicking into Cage, then going like "gorilla greetings," stuck with me. I don't know why that stuck with me, but this comes into the ridiculous kills that you get in both films. As when I'm looking at Ash, you sort of think, work shed, chainsaw on the hand. He's cutting through his reanimated corpse of his girlfriend in the work shed. With Gus the gorilla, Nicolas Cage is taking a plunger and forcing it into this gorilla's face and getting him back against the wall. And it's this very over-animated kinetic fight that they have. There's these like almost GoPro shots from like a low angle looking up on both their faces as they're struggling in the bathroom.
Sure.
And it gave me a lot of Evil Dead vibes of when Ash is just scrambling to survive in any given situation. And I think that was one for me when we're looking at horror comedy that was so apparent in this film. I haven't got an answer to it yet. I did tweet Geo Parsons, the writer, to see if an Easter egg I think I picked up on is correct or not. When the teens turn up about half an hour in the film and they're splashing all the gasoline on Willy's Wonderland, the first canister they have says like chainsaw oil or chainsaw gas on it. So I've said, I don't know if this is a stretch, but am I, give me something, reward me. I need attention. But again, I think just with the style of the kills that we get, and just the ridiculous nature of how he, you think you just killed him, but that's enough. But there's the parallels in the characters. Obviously, they're both, in a way, the cars become a character. The Chevrolet for Nicolas Cage. I know he's got the there's like a station wagon that he's got that becomes like a killing machine in the third film.
Oldsmobile, I believe.
I think it could be. The exact make escapes me. I'm terrible with cars.
Yeah.
But they're there to protect their cars. Obviously, Cage is there to handshake deal, do the job.
It's funny how new Cage's car is in this, by the way. That it's got the touchscreen. It's like it's not some like old classic. It's got like the touchscreen navigation system and all that. I don't know. I just found that funny.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean. Though, obviously, know nothing about the janitor, and we can just imply and apply our own sort of meanings and stories to him. I mean, he's got the Chevrolet. He's obviously at the end of the film cranking up Freebird, because what kind of great film doesn't end on Freebird?
Sure.
It kind of implies that, maybe he's come from money. Maybe, although this, again, going into the comedy of the character for me, because he's there to do the job, he's there to clean up, just to get his car fixed. The animatronics for him are just an inconvenience. They're just in the way of
Yeah.
him getting the job done, which I loved. And I'm sure, like Ash, the Deadites, a permanent fixture of his life and an inconvenience. They'd be better off without them. But here we are, and they're attached either way forevermore.
That's right. That's right. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
So looking again, this one was kind of again linked to sort of the horror comedy of things, and there was quite a few films I felt like could have gone with on this, but in a similar vein to Evil Dead 2, just the overall, I guess, just the ridiculousness of the premise, the ridiculousness of the situation, the villains. I'd lent towards Leprechaun 93 for this.
Okay.
And with this, I thought, Leprechaun, he's got that kind of cult status about him, which I think with Willy's Wonderland, obviously, however many people will see it because of the pandemic and its video on demand. But there's definitely scope for, whether they're necessary or not, sequels with Willy's Wonderland, I think.
Sure.
As I keep trying to pitch to Geo Parsons, Willy's Wonder World, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not scoping for a job. I'm just saying we're all hustling in the pandemic. I'm just saying.
Mhm.
But with Leprechaun, obviously, we get a lot of ridiculous situations. Obviously, Jennifer Aniston in it in a role she'd probably rather forget. But it makes you think. There's that scene where the Leprechaun's in the wheelchair and just pursuing people. And it's just the ridiculous of that. I think it's very much overarching in Willy's Wonderland, and it plays a lot of it straight, I think, for better or worse. But again, the absurdity of it all, and I suppose, like Leprechaun, if you're not sort of smiling just throughout it, then I don't know if the film is doing its job in the right way.
Right. Yeah, the concept alone should be enough to just kinda give you what you need with that movie, and yeah, definitely, these are both, just such ridiculous concepts, and you know going in, there's no way this is gonna be just straight horror, it's gonna be funny, even though I don't think Leprechaun was necessarily billed as a horror comedy at the get-go, even though they knew it was gonna be funny and they knew everyone was gonna get a laugh out of the fact that, it's Killer Leprechaun. But, I mean, it's kinda played somewhat straight, and, this, I would say, is certainly a little bit more played strictly for the laughs, but definitely, coming from the same basic kinda place, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, it's kind of what you have to go into this film knowing, is that this is a film that knows what it is. It knows it's a strange concept, and I think, the perfect way to enjoy this film is just to, and I know this might sound like a weird turn of phrase, just let the film happen.
Sure.
And I think it's a weird thing to have to sort of caveat films sometimes, but it's one of those, don't try to analyze it. Don't look for meaning. Just sit back and drink the punch like Nicolas Cage, and you'll get on with this film.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I think that could describe, my next puzzle piece as well, which is Peter Jackson's 1989 film, Meet the Feebles, which is just like a parody of the Muppets that is just insanely gory and over the top, just like all of Peter Jackson's early work was. And I miss that Peter Jackson so much because those movies are all so much fun. Dead Alive is one of my all-time favorites. But yeah, crazy, animated creatures that are killed in bloody, gory, fashion. So I think it definitely, along with like the Banana Splits movie, along with like you're saying here with Leprechaun, as well as Child's Play, I think they all kind of go together with bringing children's toys into this horrific R-rated violence and gore.
Definitely, and I suppose just touching on what you said there, early Peter Jackson, where are you? I think you just bring us something ridiculous, some splatterfest
Oh yeah.
that we all miss. Like, okay, we get it. You did Lord of the Rings.
He said on numerous occasions he wants to do it again one of these days. He's gonna like take a break from whatever he's been up to do it. So we can hope that it's gonna happen.
I just love the idea that obviously there'll be an entire generation, a planet that knows him from the Lord of the Rings. And like, oh, the next big Peter Jackson flick, and it's just it's another Meet the Feebles or something like that. And then they're all very, very confused, which I think will be wonderful to see.
Oh yes, it will. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
So again, sticking on a similar vein here, and I think this is one that the director has sort of been quite vocal in saying was an influence. 1988 Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Sure.
I think in terms of this one, on the face of it, sort of similar in you've got these strange characters. Obviously, these are the clowns that spoiler alert, the title may give it away. They're from outer space.
Yes.
They've come they've come to Earth to sort of feast on humans as sustenance, and then it's up to sort of the local townsfolk to take care of these quite grotesque looking clowns to save the day, save the town. And I think with the illusions that maybe not so much the teenagers, but Liv is here to save the town. Nicolas Cage basically just kind of stumbles into it and just goes about his day. But when we're looking at, I think again, ridiculous concepts, these memorable characters, even now, I think we're looking at 30 years later for Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I think very recently they've been getting their own pop vinyls, so that they're coming back into the conversation now for pop culture and all of that. On that side note, I've been calling for a Nick Cage pop vinyl for so long now, and if this isn't the film to do it, if he couldn't get one for Con Air, if he couldn't get one for like Adaptation, or even Face Off, if not Willy's Wonderland, then when, I beg. My tangent over, but the point remains.
I'm shocked that there's not one. That's crazy. Of all of his classic roles, that is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it's mad. I remember a friend of mine who I had on the podcast, Mike West, he said he'd emailed Funko, I think about 4 years ago, but just got a you copy and paste generic response saying, "Oh, there's licensing issues and bits and pieces like that." But again, you just think whether they've been accepted in the mainstream or not, the amount of classic Cage roles, the undeniable classic Cage roles, and I won't say this from a biased perspective. Again, like your Con Airs, your adaptations, even Mandy lends itself to.
Sure, I was just going to say that.
And pop vinyls. But I think you look at a film like this, and again, I think like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, this is a film that lends itself to that cult status. I think it's a film that's going to be very well looked after and housed in the horror community, and I think it should have a cult status to it. So if I have to wait 60 years, 30 years, and I'm in my 60s, I should say, and that's when I get the pop vinyl, then, if that's the deal, then I'll take it.
Yeah. Pre-order it right now. To the piece, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I haven't seen that since I was a kid when it scared the shit out of me. I wonder if kids now would be scared by Willy's Wonderland the way I was scared of Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, I was actually sort of thinking about this when, in terms of the pieces, and I think we can look at it with a certain eye and think, this film is what it is. I don't know if anyone's going to get scared by it. It feels like a lot of people have been sending Gio Parsons fan art, certainly, but it made me think, certainly when I was putting Friday the 13th as one of my pieces for this, like if a film like that was made today, would it receive the same acclaim? Would it be looked at in the same way and listed as the slasher classics? Like, I don't know. I kind of think that a lot of these would be viewed in a very very leniently, not taken as seriously as a horror could be. But I think the benefit of being made in the 80s, I suppose. I'm sure if Willy's Wonderland was made 87, 88, horror podcasts would still be talking about it today.
Oh yeah.
But there we go. Hopefully, it's cult status. That's the one thing I ask, if nothing
I
else.
could see it happening for sure. My next puzzle piece is actually a cult classic, so good transition there.
Expert transition.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Little Shop of Horrors.
Ooh.
I thought of that because of the way the townspeople, mainly the sheriff here in Willy's Wonderland, in the town that it takes place in, have cut this deal to feed the monsters, almost like a tribute to them, or a like a sacrifice to them, to get people into Willy's Wonderland, to let them feast on them for whatever reason. Which, I mean, it's not 100% clear why they need to eat people or kill people or whatever. But yeah, and of course, in Little Shop of Horrors, it's required for Audrey to feed, and so they have to trick people in to get them to eat. And it was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, though. I should rewatch it one of these days.
Definitely, and I suppose heck, maybe if Willy's Wonderland had some musical numbers, although I suppose we've got Nicolas Cage in basically the untold story of unrequited love with him and a pinball machine.
Oh yeah.
It's like every time, as we were saying earlier, every time he takes the lunch break, he has another punch can. He's cleaning the pinball machine a bit more, taking all this care with it. Um, and I say this with the greatest respect. He's playing it at the end as that Willy's Wonderland song is playing, made for the film. He is effectively dry humping it. I mean, each to their
Oh
own.
yeah.
2020 has been a difficult year all round. Do what you want.
He makes choices.
And none of them are wrong. I cannot stress this enough.
That is right.
But apparently, this was another scene with the pinball that Geo Parsons put in from my research. I think he said about 20 years ago, he actually met Nicolas Cage in an arcade. They ended up playing, I think it was Virtua Tennis. So he put this in basically as an homage to the time that they met. Nick Cage went on to say he had no recollection of this meeting whatsoever. He's done a lot of stuff in 20 years. Who can blame him?
Yeah.
But a little nod to their unknown history in the pinball machine as well.
That is hilarious. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
So I was kind of looking for something sort of a piece of outside horror necessarily, and I was trying to think what that could be, and without necessarily pinpointing one film in particular, I was sort of looking at the Man with No Name trilogy, obviously with Clint Eastwood. Now, yes, he speaks in it, but there was kind of allusions to the character for me in the sense, obviously, the Man with No Name with each of these films, he's effectively drifting from town to town. There's a situation he finds himself a part of. There's a bad guy that happens to be in there. And then he finds himself intertwined in these situations. And then by the end of the film, he is, moving on to the next town. And there is kind of that sort of, that strong, silent type character. Whether he is a hero or an anti-hero, we only see him in this particular situation. We don't always know that much about the backstory, what's going on here. But with just sort of the way that, they can both handle themselves in a situation. They're not easily intimidated or scared. I think it only would have been more obvious if Cage was wearing a cowboy hat or a poncho or something. But it makes me think, what was he doing before the film? Why does he love the punch? And by the end of the film, where's he driving off to next? Where's he going? Is he just going to the next town? Because if he's not phased by animatronics coming to life, possessed by the souls of murderers and monsters, then what has happened in his life to bring him to this point? There's just so much outside the frame that we don't know. We only see him in this chunk, this hour, 2 hour, 3 hour chunk. And I think it lends itself to, I guess, a fascination with the character because there's so much we can infer or think we might know about them and what they're going to do next. And I just think it's always such an interesting choice when we get that sort of, I suppose, that intentional restraint. We're not sort of gifted information on a plate here. And I just got that, he swapped a horse for a Chevrolet, obviously.
Yeah.
A horsepower of a different kind. But he's moving on to that next town. And it was just, just giving me that kind of, that classic Western gunslinging vibe there, I think.
I gotta say, the way that you described this movie, Willy's Wonderland, actually makes me like it a little bit more. It's kind of infectious the way that you've described some of these elements.
I
Yeah,
think I have to put out there, I'm not a paid sponsor of this film. I'm just a man who thinks Nicolas Cage is the greatest person on earth. I am hashtag not an ad. Let me stress that right now.
Well, I think Clint Eastwood is probably a big influence on my final puzzle piece that I have here listed, and that is the movie Payback with Mel Gibson as a guy. I should have written it down. I forget the amount that he's after, but all he wants is his X amount of dollars. It's just some small amount, like 10 grand or something like that. And he just kicks everybody's ass in the process of getting it. He's just a total badass. A lot of the things we've talked about this character that Nicolas Cage is playing, where he's just, you don't really know that much about him. You just know he's a badass and he is going to accomplish his mission no matter what. Nothing's going to get in his way. And I just love that movie Payback so much. I think it's just like the best of Mel Gibson, and so such a fun movie. And that character is such a great character, and I think that it's very similar to like the kind of thing Clint Eastwood does, very similar to the kind of thing Cage is doing here.
Yeah, definitely. I think again with actors, maybe like your Mel Gibsons, your Nick Cages, it's easy to forget, a lot of the roles that they have that are just so much fun. Again, I sort of look at it in the guise of Cage. The 2010s, especially, not the greatest year. We've got a few hits here and there. We've got Mandy that ekes through. For me, the criminally underrated Joe from 2013, which a lot of people slept on. And this is a term I've used to describe Cage before, and I hate the fact I have to use this term, but it's Joe especially is one of those films when you want to remind yourself that Nicolas Cage can act.
Right.
That's a film I sort of love to point out there.
Sure.
And it's a sign that it's not all about repaying debts and taxes for people like Cage. They still have fun in the roles, and they still do a great job in the roles as well. Which, again, coming back to Willy's Wonderland, I think was the case for me. Like, I think you can see he's having fun. I think he said in a press release, it's not every day you get the opportunity to act with ostriches, alligators, and turtles. And you're right, it isn't. I have no doubt if the script was presented to me, I would have leapt at it as well.
I will say it wasn't a puzzle piece, but you got to imagine that he is having fun when was it Arnie the alligator, I believe, or
Artie the alligator, yeah.
Artie the alligator, when he breaks open his jaw, kind of King Kong style. You know Nick Cage is having fun doing that.
Definitely, and I suppose I think he's a big Godzilla fan. So I think when we talk about Kong versus Zilla, I think he's on Team Lizard there.
Oh boy.
Which I think that's why we got a number of the animatronics as well. He's a big reptile fan, which is I think why we ended up getting like Artie the alligator. And he suggested a few amendments. Nighty Knight, as the name suggests, he's a knight, was originally going to be a pirate. He went to Geo and said, pirate, too cliche, make him a knight.
Wow, that's pull right there.
That's star power, baby, and don't forget it. Don't
Academy Award winner Nicolas Cage says he wants it to be a knight. Well, do you have any other puzzle pieces left?
Those were the main ones for me, outside of horror. The only other main one was one which I've unfortunately not seen, an early 80s Tobe Hooper film, The Funhouse, which, from what I've researched in the build-up to this, takes place in a fun house. There's a not quite human, not quite monster figure that's stalking them through the spooky ghost ride. Those plucky, overconfident teens who I'm sure won't be so plucky by the end of it. I watched the trailer for it, and it's that classic, that booming voice, like these teens are on the ride for their life, which in that schlocky way does make me really want to watch it.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet it's pretty ridiculous if nothing else.
it looks ridiculous, and that's probably why I'm going to go and seek it out. So, like I say, to my discredit, I haven't seen it, but in terms of setting and what we're getting here, some similarities with the Funhouse, which I think would be sort of my final piece to offer there on this one.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I need to see that as well. I've never seen it, but, based on, the title and description of the movie, I mean, I'm sure it's, right up the alley of this kinda thing. So, I will go ahead and do the finished puzzle, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts here on Willy's Wonderland. We talked about video games, of course, to start the thing off, and then Scott Pilgrim versus the World, House on Haunted Hill, Child's Play, the Banana Splits movie, Five Nights at Freddy's, Friday the 13th, the Evil Dead series, Leprechaun, Meet the Feebles, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Little Shop of Horrors, The Man with No Name trilogy, Payback, and The Funhouse. So obviously, lots of animatronic monsters getting bashed to bits by heroes here, but a lot of horror, a lot of comedy, and yeah, this is like we've said, this is a movie you kind of, you know, what's on the cover is exactly what you're getting once you get into the movie. It's exactly that kind of a thing. Did you have any specific, major points that we didn't quite get to while going through puzzle pieces?
Not particularly. I think, like we've been alluding to, this film is quintessentially what it says on the tin. It's Nicolas Cage beating up animatronics. I know, and obviously no pun on my own sort of show name, a lot of Cage Rage is sort of thrown around to describe this.
Mhm.
I think this is one of those films, and you sort of know them when you start watching the Cage backlog. I think when Nick Cage in a film, I should say, can meet each other and they have a similar energy, I think that's when Cage is utilized the best. There are
Mhm.
some times when Cage is used, I think, because they're expecting the full Cage experience, and it's Cage because Cage. This is a film that utilizes him. Like I say, he has no dialogue at all. It's been a bit of a. I think some people have been a bit put off by it. Some people loved it, but I think it really works in the context of the film. And again, it's a big. This is a film that gloriously knows what it is. It's a big B movie horror comedy throwback, over the top, dumb fun. It knows what it is. It's not trying to be anything else. I don't think you're going to see it on the long or short lists in the major awards for next year. Criminally neglected, of
Sure.
course, but there's no reason for me why this film won't go on to be a cult classic, especially in the hierarchy of horror as well. If you couldn't tell, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's just a great film just to sit down, forget about the world for 90 minutes. Doesn't outstay its welcome. A lot of fun. Hopefully, you enjoy it too.
Yeah, and just to kinda echo what you were just saying right there, I mean, that there is, of course, good Cage, the undeniably great movies, and then there's crazy Cage, and a lot of movies kind of, they don't go all the way to the crazy Cage level, and I think that this one approaches it definitely. I mean, a movie like, Mandy or, you know, I guess to a degree, Mom and Dad, which I know a lot of people liked, I didn't really love. I'm not sure where you fall on that one. Last year, Jujitsu was just awful, but of course, Cage wasn't really in it, barely at all, and was just kind of sold on his presence. But it's like certain movies, you're getting that crazy, crazy, insane Cage, and certain movies, they're just really not going there. They hire him, they maybe write some stuff for him to yell or whatever, or do like some kind of like craziness, but they don't quite take it where it needs to be to really truly be a fun time that could get that kind of cult status. And yeah, I think that this is one that is going to kind of live on. And I would love to see it with a crowd. Like, that's something.
Yeah.
I just said that about Psycho Goreman last week. That's a movie that this would be a good double feature with, by the way. But I would love to see that with a crowd one day once life goes back to something resembling normal.
Hopefully so. I mean, would love to see this one as well. I say, to my discredit, I've not seen Jiu-Jitsu yet, although I did weirdly win a Blu-ray copy in a Twitter competition, so I have it. I will get round to watching it. It looked like a film where Cage, you get what's in the trailer, and that's about it.
That's right.
Again, with Mom and Dad, if you want to see the greatest delivery of the word motherfucker in your life, that is the film for you. But again,
it gets 1 star for that alone. So.
I think if we're talking about Cage Rage, from everything I'm reading, apparently Prisoners of the Ghostland is the film to go to. From what I'm reading about it. Unfortunately, we couldn't get access to the Sundance screening in the UK, although I am aware he screams the word testicle. 5 stars from me. I will not comment on the matter any further.
Well, I think that about does it for Willy's Wonderland. Is there another movie you watched recently that you liked that you'd maybe want to recommend to our listeners?
Yes, I mean, I think you can probably tell where I'm going with this. I wouldn't be doing my job as a Cage podcast if I didn't recommend a Cage film.
Sure.
So I thought I would recommend something which is the old, let's not forget that Cage is a good actor. Is he interested in realism? Not really. But the easiest choice would be adaptation, sort of the critically acclaimed film from 2002. And as I say in my podcast, Daniel Day-Lewis, who stole the BAFTA from him in 2002, you're a cur, you're a ne'er-do-well, you're a vagabond, you have no place on my show. Also another Cage film which I felt was quite underrated, Matchstick Men in 2003. I think that was a great Cage performance. And it's one of those films where, in a similar way to adaptation, you watch that film and you're invested in the character, and you forget that you're watching Nicolas Cage, because he's obviously in the back of your mind, he's so well known for, as we've been saying, the full Cage experience, the screams, the over-the-top acting, the physicality. This is another one where he's played to his strengths. You forget you're watching Nicolas Cage, and you just enjoy watching a great film with a great character. So, adaptation, Matchstick Men. Hopefully, you'll enjoy those.
I don't know if you knew this, but adaptation is my number 1 favorite movie of all time. Like, it's the best. It's the best movie ever. And Matchstick Men is on my rewatch list for this year. I haven't seen it since it came out. I'm very much looking forward to rewatching. I just actually rewatched Bringing Out the Dead for the first time since the theater. Fantastic! What a movie! Add that to those 2 right there.
Just put all of Cage's films on there. You're selling yourself short. Get them all on the rewatch list.
That's true. Well, why don't you tell people again where they can find your podcast?
Yeah, so you can find me on the old Twitter machine at Cage_podcast. I'm usually pretty active on there. I'm usually on Twitter when I should be working from home. Don't tell my employer. I'm also on Instagram at Cage Rage Pod. And between the two, you can find the link tree on there where the podcast is streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Podchaser, Stitcher, Deezer, Acast, and all the other ones. Feel free to get in contact to let me know what you think about the Cage, and and I know it will be a nice opinion. Obviously, it will, because he's the greatest actor of all time. Of course. Find me on there. We'd love to chat to you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was great. And the one question I guess I have to ask at the end, I always look forward to having people back on the show. Is it going to be another Cage movie next time, or maybe something else next time? I guess that'll be up to you. But
if Nick Cage can break the rules, then so can I. We will see what happens when it happens.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
or weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Willy's Wonderland. Thank you so much to Darryl for joining me for that one. I'm looking forward to recording a episode on his podcast soon, so make sure to check out the Cage Rage podcast and look out for that episode when that comes out. So that does it for today's episode of Piecing It Together. If you like what you've been hearing here, make sure you are subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you really like what you're hearing, you can rate and review us over on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. And you could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And then if you really, really like what we're doing here, check out our Patreon. We have the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I combine content from my music career, as well as Piecing It Together, of course, as well as Awesome Movie Year, and all the other podcast and music-related stuff that I am involved with. So check that out. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Lots of great content over there. And also, speaking of Awesome Movie Year, they are currently up for a award right now, so it would be awesome if you voted for that. I'll put a link in the show notes, but it's the SMIPA Self-Made Indie Podcast Awards for Best Movie-Related Podcast, and I think we have been putting together a really nice show over there, so, hopefully you're all checking that out, but also maybe go vote for Awesome Movie Year, and let them know just how much you love Awesome Movie Year. And whatever other podcasts are on the nominees that you enjoy, make sure to throw some votes those ways as well. So let's close this thing out with a piece of music like I always do. And let me tell you, did I find the perfect piece of music to play. So those of you who listen to the show all the time know most of my music is, instrumental, kind of dramatic, electronica, ambient, alternative, film score type stuff. But I also have done a lot of stuff in the world of rap music, as well as comedy music. And I don't play that stuff too often, but there was a time I've played songs by this rapper Skydro here on the show before, and Skydro, back when I was working with him, introduced me to these people who had this thing called the Party Pals, which is very much like the characters in Willy's Wonderland. And it was these big animatronic costumed dinosaurs and other kind of animal creatures that would dance around and do songs and all that stuff. And I actually produced a handful of songs for them. This was something I was hired to do back in the early stages of my career. And there were two songs that were 100% just me. I wrote them, obviously did the music, but I'm also the rapper on them. And they named me Rockosaurus for these. And I usually only play one song at the end of an episode, but I mean, when am I going to get another chance to play these? So I'm going to play just back to back. These are the two songs that I'm the rapper on. The first one is called In Your Hands, and the other one is Safety Pals. And there were videos for these that they put together with people in, like I said, dinosaur costumes just dancing around with kids. And these are like safety rap songs. And they're absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what happened to the Party Pals. There used to be a lot of info about them online. If you did a little Googling, you'd find some of the videos of their events and stuff like that. Hopefully the people involved have all gone on to do some interesting, exciting stuff. I have no idea, but we're left with some very interesting, fun songs. So these are Party Pals songs by me. So enjoy them, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together coming up real soon.
This is a Safety Pals and Party Pals public service announcement. So Spread the word, kids! Let's go! Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember that your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember your life is in your hands. If it looks like it would hurt you, there's a chance that it could get hurt, cause you're not careful, it's no good. You gotta wear your helmets and your safety pads. Michael told you who's bad, but I'ma tell you what's bad. If you don't listen close, you're gonna wish you had. Cause if you ever get hurt, the party pals will be sad. And so will your mom and dad too. So listen to the lessons and be safe when you do what you do. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember that your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember your life is in your hands. There's a lot of things in life that can be fun to do, but getting hurt when having fun is never fun for you. You gotta play it safe, kids, and take my word. Cause if you mess with fire, then you're gonna get burned. Don't touch electrical sockets without your parents nearby. Cause if you're not careful, then you can fry. And you can even die if you're not paying attention. And it's a whole lot worse than after school detention. And I can't forget to mention scissors and sharp things. Safety service knows that when you cut yourself it stays. And you should listen to your parents and all the safety pals, kids. Cause if you get hurt, you're also gonna get grounded. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember that your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember that your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember that your life is in your hands. Across the street at the corner, I warned you, don't play with matches and fire. It will scorch you! Rockosaurus with words and a plan. Just remember your life is in your hands. Hi kids, it's Rockosaurus. Hi kids, it's Safetysaurus. We're here to tell you a little story. Yeah, a story. We want to tell you why you need to be careful in the summer. Around water. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Texas, New York, or California, the party pals are Rockosaurus. About to warn ya. We took a look through the brook and you know what we found. Up between May and September, the most children drown. The sound of a splash on most days could be fun, but you can't be dumb, it's all about protection. Making sure you got your mom and your dad watching you. If not, a guardian you can trust, that'll do. And trust me, I know that in the summer it gets hot, but trust me, I know that in the summer you should not be swimming without the proper supervision, cause you can really get hurt, it's not a superstition. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. In the summer months when the weather gets hotter, I know you wanna grab your swimming trunks and jump in the water, but there's things you should know before you go and get wet. If you're not careful in the water, you can lose your breath. That's why you always gotta be supervised when you try to have a fun time in the water. That's right, you could even go to the YMCA like every day to take a swim in a pool that's safe. It's like Filbert always says, gotta think with your head. And I know you're paying attention to every word he said. 30 drowned in June, that's like one a day. That's why you should listen to the words I say. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety. It ain't no game, yo. Party pals pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety, it ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety, it ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety, it ain't no game, yo. Party pals and safety pals, it's all the same when it comes to water safety, it ain't no game, yo. This is a Safety Pals and Party Pals public service announcement. So spread the word, kids!
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.